Have you ever found yourself wishing you could just, know what was going to happen next?
Oh, definitely.
I mean, truly, perfectly predict the future, absolute certainty.
Yeah.
Or maybe you've heard about this idea of a deterministic universe where everything is, predetermined, like clockwork.
It's a really compelling idea, isn't it? The thought of knowing everything, such sort of ultimate predictability.
Right.
But as we're going to get into in this deep dive, even if the universe was perfectly deterministic, there are these, well, really surprising limits to actually predicting it.
And that's exactly our topic today. The limits of prediction, determinism, and free will. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
It really is.
Our discussion today, it's based on some really thought-provoking excerpts from an article called, well, exactly that, Limits of Prediction, Determinism, and Free Will.
And our mission, for you listening, is to explore why. Why, even in a perfect deterministic world, perfect prediction just isn't possible.
Right. And what do these limits actually mean for, big concepts like free will, our own sense of agency?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, get ready for some logical paradoxes, some pretty deep physical constraints. It's quite a journey.
Okay, so let's set this up. Imagine this, like perfect deterministic universe.
All right.
So if you knew everything about it, position of every particle, all the forces at one single moment,
Right. The complete state.
you could, in theory, calculate everything that ever happened or ever will happen, like a cosmic movie playing out.
The classic picture. And this leads to the idea of an all-knowing system, sometimes called Laplace's demon.
Laplace's demon, right. This hypothetical intelligence that could answer any factual yes-no question about this universe.
But, and this is the crucial bit from the article, even this theoretical super predictor hits a wall. And it's not just like a technical problem.
Not just needing a bigger computer.
No, not at all. It's deeper. The first big limit is logical. It comes down to self-reference.
Self-reference. How does that stop an all-knowing demon?
Well, the core idea is some questions simply cannot be answered truthfully, even if you know everything else. It's a built-in logical contradiction.
Okay, I need an example. What does the article say?
So the classic example is you ask this system, will the next output you give be no?
Okay. Will the next output be no? Let me think.
Right, so if the system plans to answer yes, well, that would mean its next output should be no, contradicting the yes.
Okay. And if it plans to answer no?
Then its next output is no, which makes its answer no actually true, but the answer was supposed to be no, meaning false, so it's still a contradiction.
Whoa. Okay, yeah, that's like the old this statement is false paradox.
Exactly like that, the liar paradox.
So it's not about missing data.
Yeah.
The question itself is unanswerable truthfully.
Precisely. It's a fundamental logical barrier. It shows that even in a perfectly deterministic setup, perfect prediction, or omniscience, faces inherent logical limits.
That's pretty mind-bending. So, okay, logic can tie things in knots, but the article doesn't stop there, right? It talks about actual devices.
Yes, counterpredictive devices. This is another fascinating limit.
Counterpredictive? What does that mean?
Imagine building a machine whose sole purpose is to do the opposite of whatever is predicted about it.
So if I predict it'll turn left,
It's programmed to turn right. If you predict it will output 1.
it outputs 0, okay? Like a deliberately contrary machine.
Exactly. So even if you have a perfect predictor, perfect knowledge of the device's initial state and programming,
If you feed the prediction to the device,
it will always invalidate the prediction because the prediction itself becomes input that changes the device's behavior.
it creates a loop. The prediction influences the system being predicted.
Precisely. It's an unbreakable information loop. It demonstrates that determinism alone doesn't guarantee predictability when the predictor is part of the system, or when its output influences the system.
That's a really clever point. So determinism isn't the same as predictability in practice, especially with feedback.
That's a key takeaway.
Okay, so we have logical paradoxes. We have these sort of actively resistant devices. But the limits go even deeper, right? Into physics itself.
They do. The article looks at both Newtonian physics and relativity.
Let's start with Newton. That's usually the image of the clockwork universe, right? Perfectly predictable if you know the starting conditions.
That's the common idea. But for perfect prediction of the entire universe, Newtonian physics would require you to know the exact position and momentum of every single particle simultaneously.
Okay, sounds hard, but theoretically possible for a demon.
Well, here's the physical snag. How could you ever confirm you've accounted for every particle? especially when Newtonian gravity acts instantaneously across any distance.
Meaning everything affects everything else right now.
Instantly. So missing even one tiny dust speck somewhere out in the cosmos could, in principle, subtly alter the trajectory of everything else over time. Complete knowledge becomes physically unattainable.
Right, you can't be sure you've got the whole picture. Okay, what about Einstein's relativity? Does that change things?
It does, and it introduces a different kind of limit. In relativity, to predict what happens at a certain point in spacetime, you only need information from its past light cone.
The past light cone. That's like everything in the past that could have possibly sent a signal traveling at light speed to influence this point now.
Exactly. It's the causal history. But here's the limitation. Your past light cone isn't identical to my past light cone, especially when we consider future events.
Because we're in different locations, moving differently.
Right. Our cones are nested and shifted relative to each other. So the information accessible within my light cone to predict my immediate future might inherently lack some crucial detail that's only just entering your light cone, which could influence your future state in a way I couldn't foresee perfectly.
So even with the laws of relativity, perfect universal prediction is still out of reach because information is localized by these light cones.
That's the essence of it. These aren't just philosophical points or computational limits. They are fundamental constraints baked into the physics itself.
Okay, wow. So if perfect prediction is impossible logically, practically with feedback loops, and physically,
Right.
what on earth does this mean for free will?
The million-dollar question.
Because, you often hear physicists say determinism means free will is just an illusion.
That's definitely a common perspective. If everything is predetermined, how can choices be free?
Yeah.
But the author of the article suggests a different path, a kind of middle ground.
A middle ground, how does that work?
It involves taking physics, like determinism, seriously, absolutely, but also refining what we actually mean by things like decision-making and agency.
So not necessarily trying to find some sort of loophole in physics for spooky free will.
Exactly. Not trying to prove metaphysical free will, but rather trying to build models of how creatures like us, cognitive agents, actually make decisions within the known physical world.
Modeling cognition and action in a way that respects the physics, but maybe still captures something meaningful about our experience of choosing.
Precisely. The argument is that the impossibility of perfect prediction, even in a deterministic world, creates space for a meaningful concept of agency. Our actions might be determined by prior causes, but they are fundamentally unpredictable in detail by any external observer, or even by ourselves, due to these limits.
Interesting. So even if my action follows from the state of the universe a second ago, the fact that nobody could have perfectly predicted that action leaves room for it to feel and perhaps functionally be a genuine choice in some sense.
That's the kind of refinement the author points towards. It encourages us to think about what our intuitive sense of freedom actually entails, and whether it truly conflicts with determinism once we understand the limits of prediction.
So thinking about this, for you listening, how does this resonate with your own feeling of making choices? Does knowing prediction is limited change anything?
It leads to what the article calls a valuable methodological lesson. Start with the concrete physics. Start with the models we have for the universe, rather than starting with abstract philosophical definitions of free will or determinism and trying to force them together.
Let's a physics guide the philosophy in a way.
Yes. By analyzing the implications of our best physical theories, we get much more precise insights into these old, deep questions about time, cause, prediction, and agency.
It's almost like the article is saying nature itself, through its inherent limits, has sort of practically navigated these tensions already.
That's a great way to put it. The physical reality of decision-making beings exists. Our job is perhaps less about proving one abstract concept over another, and more about refining both our physics and our philosophy to accurately describe that reality.
So, to sort of wrap up this part of our deep dive, the core idea is that perfect prediction seems to be off the table, logically, physically.
It's impossible, even if the underlying laws are perfectly deterministic.
And that very impossibility, that inherent unpredictability, opens up this really interesting, nuanced space.
Yeah, a space to rethink what concepts like free will or agency might mean, not in opposition to physics, but perhaps within the framework physics provides, including its limitations.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to take away and maybe mull over.
Go for it.
If the universe itself has these fundamental, built-in limits to being perfectly predicted, what does that imply about the significance of every choice you make? A choice that, while maybe determined, was inherently unpredictable.
Hmm.
What does that unpredictability tell us about the nature of being a decision-making creature in this complex universe?
The deep question. Hopefully exploring these limits might give you maybe a slightly different, perhaps deeper appreciation for your own agency.